Kate here, and today we're going to talk about routines that help prepare you as a course creator. Now, the reason this is important is because there are two different ways that you approach your work. And it used to be called right-brained and left-brained, which was very handy to use as a term, but it's actually kind of inaccurate. People who are creative do not spend more time on one side of their brain than the other. It actually requires both sides of your brain. So the terms right brain and left brain are very handy, but I'm not going to use them today. I'm going to refer to the aspects of yourself, seeing yourself as both creative and analytical. Now, a lot of people tend to think of themselves as one or the other. We're going to discuss that too. So we're going to discuss why it's important really to embrace both parts of yourself, to embrace being both creative and analytical. And we're going to talk about routines that can help support your creativity and routines that help support your analytical self. So we sometimes have this idea that people are one or the other. And I grew up with extremes. I had a mother who was incredibly creative and a father who was incredibly logical, and they fit the stereotype. In fact, I think they fit that stereotype because they also embraced that stereotype. So they saw themselves as one and not the other. My mother is a musician, so she was super fluid with the creativity and flow and would go from one thing to another. She was kind of flighty and unpredictable, where my dad is like incredibly predictable. He was a nuclear power plant control room operator. He was in the Navy. He's all about machinery and science and technology and processes and checklists. This man loves checklists. I remember when he was driving his truck many years ago. This is before dashboards would tell you the miles per gallon. My dad would have a checklist every time that you filled up his gas tank. You had to write down what is the mileage and how many gallons of gas did you put in, so he could calculate his miles per gallon and monitor the efficiency of his truck. So very logical dad, very creative mom. And I kind of saw myself sometimes as bridging those two. And I thought that was kind of unique. But the truth is that we are all a mix of these. So if you look at my mother's creativity and flightiness and all the ways that you see her and go, that woman is clearly a creative. Now, creativity shows up in different ways. So she was an artist, but she was a musician. She was a good writer, but not necessarily a great writer. But musician, she was excellent. So when you look at her, you might be so distracted with her creativity as you could miss the analytical part of her. And this woman, when she has decided that she's going to pursue some crazy harebrained idea, and yes, she has had a lot of those. And I love that creativity that she's had, and like, oh, I'm going to do this unusual creative thing. But in the pursuit of those particular things, there was planning and there was learning and there was following a checklist and following a schedule. So she did have that analytical part of her that it wasn't missing in her. And when it comes to my dad, though he is very logical and very sequential, very process oriented, he has this ability to use analogies that are fantastic. He can break down very complex things into more simple concepts so that it can be understood by everyone. And that takes a lot of creativity to do that sort of thing. So in essence, they really are both. Now, they may feel more comfortable with one end than the other, and you may as well. And I go into this whole thing because you use both aspects of this when you create a course. You need that creativity to generate ideas, to come up with ways to portray your content to your people, to get their attention, to write stories, to create activities, to get hooks, to grab attention, all that type of thing. That is going to be required for creativity. And sometimes to come up with a way to grab someone's attention or to do an activity, you might have to generate a ton of ideas, because we know that there's going to be one idea that comes to the surface. And a lot of times when we approach a creative task with that analytical mind in place. So let's say, well, I want to go and I want to create a good activity. And so I'm going to come up with an idea and evaluate as I do it. That doesn't work. And we'll go into that in a little bit, but that doesn't work to go in there and say, oh, how about this idea? Nope, nope, that won't work. If you're doing that, you are basically cutting off that flow and that ease that you're looking for in a brainstorming session. That's why a lot of times, like in corporations, when they say, okay, this is a brainstorming, there are no bad ideas, you're not permitted in that activity to criticize the idea that somebody has, because while that idea may be completely untenable, it can lead to other ideas that weren't there before. So it can help generate further creativity. So when you're creative, just be incredibly creative. Pretend like there was no limits to money, to time. Pretend that you had access to alien technology. Whatever it takes to generate those ideas, go ahead and generate a lot of them. You may come up with a very good idea that is untenable. You cannot make it work. But you could look at that idea and go, huh, okay, so I can't have an alien come down and give people, laser guns. But what can I do? What can I do with this idea? And I'm not sure that I can do anything with aliens and laser guns, but is there some aspect of this that will help me come up with an activity that's better than I would have had if I didn't have this crazy harebrained idea, right? So when you go to do that creative task, do not bring that analytical part with you. You want to promote the creativity. And then in the same way, when it's time to, do the more analytical thinking, this is sometimes, it can be seen as hard, but this is the polish for it, right? This is, you come up with all these great ideas, and it's your logical part that says, okay, this will work and that won't work. Now, I have been recently playing a lot of games with a friend, and it's Words with Friends. It's like Scrabble, but online if you haven't played this. And so you get so many letters and you have to put them on the board, but there are rules about where you put it, and it has to make words like in all the different ways, right? And it's so fun to see those letters there and come up with creative aspects and different ideas for what you can do with those 7 little letters, right? Or the analytical part of the game says, no, you can't put this word there because of this rule. It doesn't make a word here. And there are many times you just want to stretch it, but that analytical part says, no, it won't work. In the same way with the courses, sometimes you can come up with this incredibly great idea and you want to make it work and you want to force it into that course, and it won't work. And you need that analytical part to say, yes, it's a great idea. Yes, it's wonderful and you are a creative person, but you're going to have to take that idea and either modify it and adapt it so it will work in this place, or you're going to have to shelve that idea and hope that you're able to use it on another course in another day. That's the value of your analytical brain. Now, this is seen very easily when it comes to like writing a book. So you might love to read books like I do, but you can tell when a book is lacking in creativity or in editing. Some books are not creative. They're just like the same formula you see over and over again, and they're kind of boring. And then other books are incredibly creative and they're fun, but they could have used a little bit more editing, a little more polish. Both aspects are important, both creativity, both logic, all of this is really good, and it's going to make your course even better. So how do you prepare yourself to be creative? And how do you prepare yourself to be logical? I actually do kind of this on my own when I think about, okay, what task do I have to do next? What task do I need to do next in my course? And does this task require me to be creative, or does it require me to be logical and analytical? For tasks that are creative, I am thinking about what can I do that will support ease and flow, right? So that's your goal, ease and flow. You want to generate ideas without any sort of evaluation. Generate ideas without evaluation because you want to be able to just throw out as many creative ideas as you can. So to do this, this is some of my ritual, but I'm curious to see what you would do. I want to inspire you to think about your own ritual. So I think about what is necessary for me to create ease and flow for myself. So going for a walk or doing some sort of activity, for me, sometimes taking a bath will just relax me enough. Spa music or relaxing music, music that doesn't make me that doesn't distract me with thoughts or lyric or beat or something like that, but almost one that stays in the background, right? A music that inspires me. Sometimes I do a task around the house, like cook or paint or doing creative things that help me think about what tasks I have to do next, and it gives space for that. So here, I'll give you an example. This vase here is just a plain clear vase that I bought at a thrift store, and I mixed some paint with some baking soda to give it this texture and created this vase. So this is the type of creative task I would do that allows me to have these ideas churn in my brain while I'm doing that sort of thing. So think about those types of tasks to support your creative self. Then when it's time for me to sit down and write those stories and stuff, I will often keep that music going, light a candle, have this very relaxing herbal drink. Some people will use like a glass of wine to be creative. I find that sometimes it can be difficult to gauge how much alcohol you're drinking. And then of course, if you drink too much alcohol, those ideas are not so good. So I limit myself to some like herbal tea or some relaxing drink that I can drink without having to worry about monitoring it, but it puts me in that very creative mood. That is how I support my creativity. And then it's time to put that creativity to the end, to the side. You need to shelve that creativity, and then you invite that analytical self to the task. Now, I always try to put space between my creative tasks and my analytical tasks. That way I have a chance to step away from it. Sometimes when you're in the middle of coming up with some super creative ideas, you can fall in love with those ideas. And then it's hard for you to see it with a fresh set of eyes. It's hard for you to see it from a logical point of view. So I like to put some space, as much space as I can. Often a day is enough. So do the creative task one day, you go to sleep, you come back the next day with a different approach. And this is a logical and analytical approach. I often include music, but it's a different type of music. I use like an electronic focus music. Again, I don't want music that has lyrics because that distracts me, but some sort of driving beat that feels like I need to get something done. It is motivating, and I'm not thinking about flow and ease right now. I'm thinking about getting stuff done. That puts me in the right mindset for thinking about what that content, that creative content is, what's going to work, and what needs to be tweaked and modified or adapted. So for this type of thing, like I said, the music, there's no candles with this, there's no herbal tea. It might be more along the lines of a coffee, something that drives that particular goal. With the analytical part, the one thing that I'm always keeping in mind is, what is it that I'm trying to do with this? Because that will sometimes help me determine if this activity or story or the tension grabbing thing or this fun idea that I have, does it contribute to my end goal? Because if it doesn't, it's out. That simple. You don't want to waste your students' time. So I hope that this has helped you. I'm curious what kind of rituals you might do for creativity and logic. And I'm curious to see, do you see yourself as one or the other? And maybe the ritual will help you to help support that other thinking. So if you tend to see yourself as a very logical person, do you think a ritual will help you with creativity? I think it will. And if you're a very creative person, do you think a ritual will help you with that logical part? That part that's always driving for that end goal, and that is results for your students. So have a beautiful day. If you need to have more videos about creating courses, there's plenty of them here, and I will see you in the next video.